وأقول في القرآن ما جاءت به آياته فهو الكريم المنزال وأقول قال الله جل جلاله والمصطفى الهادي ولا أتأول.
The author of the original text is Al-Imam Al-Allama Sheikh Abdul Aziz ibn Abdullah ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, who died 1420 after the Hijrah. Oops. Let me write that here. 1420 after the Hijrah. He died rahimahullah ta'ala. So one of the modern scholars, not one of the scholars who was, 700, 800 years in the past. He was the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia. And he was one of those people that many of us believe were a mujaddid, someone who Allah Azza wa Jal chose to renew the faith among people and to cause people to go back to the proper understanding of the religion. So he was one of the great scholars of our time. And me, myself, I wasn't able to sit in front of him, rahimahullah ta'ala. I didn't get a chance because I started seeking knowledge after the Sheikh passed away, rahimahullah ta'ala. However, I did have the blessing and the by the grace of Allah, to sit with many of his students. The explanation of the book is by my Sheikh, my teacher, Sheikh Abdul Razzaq ibn Abdul Muhsin al-Badr. Sheikh Abdul Razzaq ibn Abdul Muhsin al-Badr. His name is right here. That is Abdul Razzaq ibn Abdul Muhsin al-Badr. May Allah protect and preserve him and his father. And I sought knowledge from him and from his father both extensively during the time that I was in Medina. And the explanations of the Sheikh are really valuable. And I love the way Sheikh Abdul Razzaq describes Sheikh bin Baz with three things. Or he describes with more than three things, but if we just see what the Sheikh Abdul Razzaq, who is explaining the book, says about Sheikh bin Baz, he says, wa shaykhun nasihun wa murabbin mushfiqin, that he was a sincere advisor. He was a sheikh from, no doubt, among the most knowledgeable of the people that we had in our time. And among the most prestigious and the most knowledgeable of the scholars of our time. But he was nasih. And there's no doubt that if you talk about Sheikh bin Baz, everybody who knew Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, would say that the Sheikh, he was nasih. He was someone who really cared, really gave advice to people. He wasn't someone who sat on a chair and taught books and then walked away into his house and locked the door. He was someone who he was always giving advice, trying to help people, trying to help the students. And indeed, subhanAllah, this is one thing that the people who knew Sheikh bin Baz, they missed the most from the Sheikh, not just the knowledge, but they miss the way the Sheikh had, the care the Sheikh had for his students, and the sincerity and the advice that he would give to them. So the Sheikh gave sincere advice. He was a nasih. He was a murabbi, someone who nurtured people. He took people from the very beginning of their knowledge to becoming senior scholars in their own right. And today, the students of Sheikh bin Baz are the senior scholars that we have today. They are the students of Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala. So he was a murabbi, somebody who nurtured people and who really took them from the very beginning of their knowledge to the stage where they became senior scholars. And he was mushfiq. He really cared. He was caring. he really cared. And students would come to him and say things like, Sheikh, I've got a problem with my family, I have a problem with money, I have issues like this, I'm struggling with this. And this is the most senior scholar in the country, the head of all of the scholars in that country. And he would give them time and he would care about everyone's little problems, everybody's small problems. SubhanAllah, he's effectively, from an Islamic point of view, running a country. From the Islamic point of view, the fatwa and the Islamic affairs. And yet he gave so much time to people's individual needs. And I think this shows in this book that he wrote, Ad-Durus al-Muhimmah li'ammat al-Ummah. Because the Sheikh, at that level, you imagine that the Sheikh is the senior scholar of his time, one of the most senior people of his time. He can be writing books for scholars to learn from. But the Sheikh, he really cared so much about the general people, about the people around him, the neighbor who wasn't a student of knowledge, the person who was working outside of his house. He cared so much about them that he gave so much time and attention to writing books and teaching classes for regular people, not just for the students of knowledge and the senior people, not lessons that of academia where I'm teaching people doctorate and I'm teaching people postgraduate studies and so on. But he gave his time to even teaching just the people who would just come and pray in the masjid, the people who were the workers, the people who were passing through from the regular Muslims, the regular folk. And that was something the Sheikh gave a great deal of importance to, rahimahullah ta'ala. This treatise that the Sheikh wrote, he gave it a great deal of importance right until the end of his life. So it wasn't something that he wrote and he just left it. Like he wrote it and he said, okay, I've written it now, I've written a book for regular people, so there's the book. The Sheikh kept on coming back to this book time and time again. And the last edition of this book, which is mentioned right here, the last edition of this book, which the Sheikh corrected himself and printed and went through and he added to it, it was printed again in the year that he died, rahimahullah ta'ala. So right up until the Sheikh's death, he was adding chapters, he was moving things around, he had added some content, he had changed some things, he had edited some things, right up until the year that he died, rahimahullah ta'ala. And I think that really shows us personally that this book is something the Sheikh gave a lot of importance to. And I just think that's such a contrast with how people behave today, is that you have people who have way less knowledge than Sheikh bin Baz had, rahimahullah ta'ala. And yet they cut themselves off from the people and they suffice themselves with academia, and their only concern is PhD upon PhD and progressing in the academic world and having academic recognition. And yet someone who, in all honesty, was multitudes of levels of more knowledgeable than them, and yet until the last year that he died, he was busy trying to fix things in what he wrote for the regular people that came to his masjid. And the regular Muslims who are working 9 till 5, who are, general people who are living their lives and they're not dedicated students of knowledge. And the Sheikh, he thought they were so important that he didn't stop revising this book and adding to it and changing it and correcting it until he died, rahimahullah ta'ala.